Welcome to Boomhauer69's channel, and today Boomhauer is going to talk about an idea he had for homelessness. These are just pictures I found off from Google search engine of sheds that I thought would be neat to, if I knew how to build them, I think would be neat to convert into a tiny house and stuff. Like, I thought it would be neat someday when I get the money, get a truck and trailer, and get some scrap building material and try my hand at building some tiny house structure. And if I was really good at it, building sheds, I should say, I would build some and make some small little tiny house structures for homeless people if I could, And these are just some pictures here of sheds that I found on Google search engine that I thought look neat, like this one here, and I got to thinking, about, they gave me some rough ideas of what I would do for times. I really like this wood here on this one, and what I would do for a tiny house structure for a homeless. And these are just, again, pictures I found off of Google search engine. I didn't take these. I don't own the rights to these pictures. These are just pictures I found off from Google search engine. And what I thought about doing this for homeless people is these, like a little structure like this, build a small little structure, sure, big enough to have a few furnishings in it, like, I thought it would be neat in one of these to build it out of 2x4s, studded lumber, and build it easy enough where it can be easy insulated, put some basic insulation in it. And then for like furnishings, I would make it big enough where you could have at least a twin size bed in there, where you could have a fold up twin size rollaway bed, as I call them, those beds that people a lot of times buy when they have a bunch of guests over to their house, and have one of those twin size rollaway bed, a small nightstand, and a table over on one side where they could sit and do some things, and then have like some sort of vertical, instead of horizontal, vertical dresser, and kind of big enough for those things right there. So, and if I had the money and the funding and I was going to build these a small shed, I would build a basic structure, maybe even something like this, possibly, where you have a window. These are just kind of some rough ideas. If I was going to build a tiny house for a homeless person, the type of homeless person I would probably build for is maybe like somebody who has land and they had a house fire and they lost everything and they need something to temporarily stay in until they can figure out what to do, instead of just living in a car type situation where I would build one of these and give it to that person so they could stay in it until they could figure out what to do. And these were just some pictures of little sheds that I thought would look kind of cute and neat to convert into a tiny house. And again, what I would add inside there is I'd insulate it very well. Add like a rollaway bed in there on one side for the homeless person, and a table on the other side, and maybe a nightstand and a dresser so they can store some stuff, in the dresser, and incorporate some of those little ideas. Don't make it really huge. Basically, enough room for them to lay down and kind of keep out of the weather, kind of thing, and I wouldn't make it so huge where they could easily take like a small portable heater, like one of those Mr. heaters, or that run on propane, or some sort of butane heater. I know they make butane heaters. I've seen them, and where they could easily in the wintertime heat it up, with that. Or if they happen to have a small wood stove, maybe a small wood stove or something. But most likely a homeless person would probably way, through donations, and donate a Mister heater, one of those, I always call them Mister Buddy heaters, but one of those propane Mister heaters, and something basic where they could easily heat it up and keep out of the weather. And building this would be to encourage them to, to help them, think about, okay, what next do I gotta do to get out of being homeless, what do I gotta do next? And, kind of that thing, to help them, boom, so they can say, okay, I don't gotta worry about being cold, because see, when you're living in a tent in the middle of winter and it's below zero, it's super cold, it's only in the teens and stuff, you're more trying to focus on how do I stay warm and not die of hypothermia, and if I could, I would build something like this for homeless people, something basic. It would probably be more, not as fancy as these, more on the lines of these, these kind of wood, because what I would do is I don't know how to build anything. I'm not a carpenter, I'm not a contractor, but if I knew how to do it, this here, according to this photo, is a 6x8. I would build something like this, and if I knew how to do it, and I'd be using, obviously, scrap material, donated lumbers or whatever, And in the near future, when I do plan on getting a pickup truck and maybe a small trailer, and I might try to actually build something, I know people who are carpenters, and maybe I could ask them, hey, could you help me, teach me how to build, maybe, if they have free time, But basically, that's what I'd like to do, is like small little sheds like these, like build a basic one. Like this one here would probably be what I would kind of try to build more, something basic, and then go to my local shelters and places that help out homeless and ask them, hey, do you know where the homeless are at, where are they staying, and see what kind of situation they're in, what kind of spot are they in, and then figure a way to donate it to them. Say, here's the structure. Or if I had a lot of money and funds, I'd almost look into maybe building a tiny house village and stuff, I think it would be neat to do this. And I also think it would be neat to, as a business-wise, build tiny houses for business in my state. And that's one of the things I do plan on doing sometime, is gaining that knowledge and figure out how I can make a business out of it. And one of the things I would add to one of these types of structures is just simply a basic, small solar panel, where a basic electrical solar setup, where they would have enough power to charge up their cell phone and run a few lights and maybe a small radio or something, a small maybe 100 watt or 200 watt setup, something basic where they'd help them, The goal would be is to give them a little bit of a housing luxury to help them to focus on what do they gotta do next to get out of being homeless, and kind of help put some of their worries away, like the whole trying to stay warm in the winter and stuff, and give them and make it big enough where they have a bed over here and a little table where they can do some things. Maybe if they got a little butane gas stove or something, they could cook them up some food or something, or have a notebook and write down, okay, the to-do list, like gotta do this or gotta do that and whatever, And that's one of my ideas would be, is to build some sort of sheds like these and convert them into a tiny house, and to help, give homeless kind of a little bit a place to stay, Like this one here, what I really liked about it is the simple fact of the wood. I really like the wood design on this fancy and the wood thing, I think this was really cool, and and if I had the funds too, I plan on in the near future building me a small off-grid type tiny house structure, That's actually one of my goals is when I get the funding in the near future in the land, I'm going to actually kind of live more off-grid and build a tiny house and actually live in it. So, but yeah, something like these two, this one and this one as well would be what I'd go for. Like, I would build something, if I could, something that's basically kind of like an 8x8 structure, you know. This one here being 6x8, according to the picture, would be beautiful, and to me would be perfect to figure out, okay, how to convert this into a tiny house. I would do the simple, you know, 2x4 structure, 16 on center studs and stuff, and basic insulation to kind of help keep warm. And that's one of my ideas and goals, is to be able to sometime maybe do that, you know, build some small tiny house structures and stuff, you know. Right now I don't have a truck and trailer, so I couldn't, you know, go on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace and look up free building material and you know, stuff. Because that's what I would do if I would get, you know, what they call reclaimed lumber, you know, look on the marketplace, find some good used doors and windows and go from there, you know, and then maybe if I knew how to properly do it, you know, take donations as well, you know, if I knew how to do that sort of thing. But first, before I did that, I would have to, in my area, find out where the homeless are at and stuff, and figure out how their situation is and how can I best help them out. Because sometimes building a tiny house, converting a shed into a tiny house for a homeless person, might not be the best solution to helping the homeless. The whole goal would be you'd have to figure out what the best solution is, you know. Because obviously, if you build one of these structures, you wouldn't want, you know, a homeless person just 20 years from now or 10 years from now still living in it, you know. You'd want to make it where it would be an encouragement for them to want to get up and get out. Because you have some homeless people that you just can't help no matter what, you know. And some homeless people, this right here might not be the actual option. It might be just simply donating some food and maybe some supplies to help them out, or simply helping them get into like maybe a rehabilitation. Say maybe they might be somebody suffering from an addiction, helping them get like a rehab and stuff, you know. That might be a way. You know, there's other ways to helping out homeless, I know, than just trying to build tiny houses. But I think it would be neat to have the funding to build maybe some little structures like these and donate them to homeless. Obviously, they wouldn't look nothing like this. I just got these pictures off of Google to kind of give me a kind of a mental image of what it would be like inside. You know, I have in my head what I think it'd be like, and I would simply, and I do think about how neat it would be someday maybe start up my own business of actually building tiny houses for a living and making profit off of them as well, and that would be one thing I would think would be neat to do in the near future. But as to, and even if I did do that in the near future, I would still, you know, be over here, be a big construction company building tiny houses, and then saving scrap material over here to, you know, and build little tiny houses and give them away to homeless people still, even if I was a construction company and for, you know, to do, you know. And so yeah, that's one of my ideas, is to build like something like this, and possibly if I had the funds and the money and the knowledge. I don't have the knowledge or the money right now to do that sort of thing, but if I could get those things, I would in the near future do that, help out. I think it would be neat to do that and build a tiny house structure and get with my local organizations in my area that help out homeless people and do something like that. Because to me, I watch a lot of videos about tiny houses and a lot of videos about homeless people and how they live, and I always see these homeless people living on the streets, and they always got all these tents and tarps and canopies and all this stuff, and it doesn't look good. And to me, if more people built stuff like this, like a small like shed tiny house for some homeless people, that are truly trying to get up and get out of life, because you got people who are homeless simply because they just was living paycheck to paycheck, and one day they lost their job, and then you also have people who may had a house fire and they just simply couldn't rebuild, and not every homeless person out there is a bad person. That's one thing I think a lot of people assume. They think, oh, just because someone's homeless, that they're a drug addict or this or they're this or that, and they assume that they're a bad person, and that's not always the case. It may be, there's good people in everybody. There's actual homeless people that are truly good people and they're trying to get up. And to me, building like a little shed-like structure and maybe setting it up on some abandoned property, or something for them, and to me it'd be better than them living in a makeshift homemade tarp and like you see a lot of them do. It'd be neat to build little house structures like these and try to make them a little nicer, and maybe the local law enforcement and people would not bother them too much versus ones, in church. Because, see, the problem is a lot of homeless people will set up a camp. Let's say there's a big vacant parking lot somewhere, for example, and you get a bunch of homeless people in this big parking lot. What do they do? They go to dumpsters and they try to look for couches and things to try to make their life comfortable, and they try to build structures out of tarp and scrap woods, and in the end it doesn't look good, but that's all they got. They don't have other options, and to me, it would be neat to be able to build these, because it would make and have enough money to build these and give them to homeless people and make everything look nicer and not bring down the community and the property values and stuff, because if more people who had the knowledge and funding could do this, build tiny houses for the homeless people, to me, then a lot of homeless people wouldn't need to go out and build little tarps and odd structures that just look trash, and that's the problem. Then these people who live in these communities gotta see that every day, and then they get all complaining like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, and that they're living in this trash tarp shelter, and you have people complaining, and it's like, well, what can you do? They're homeless. They have no other choice. And me, if I had the funding in my area, and the homeless around my area, I would love to have the funding, the money, and the knowledge to build little structures like these in a small, and give them to them so they have something that looks more prettier to stay in, and have it pretty good and insulated, where they could just take a small little heater and set it up inside there and stay nice and warm and stay out of the and keep them out of the cold elements, where they could be nice, where they can be pretty warm, and they can sit at the little table inside and say, okay, what do I gotta do next to get out of homelessness, where they could go to the local shelters, because I know a lot of homeless shelters have rules and stuff. Like, I know there's a lot of people out there that make a lot of tiny house communities that are kind of geared towards homelessness, but the problem is that they have so many rules and regulations and stuff, and sometimes it can be hard for a person to live in those. And me, if I was going to build a tiny house community, I wouldn't have all these silly little rules. My only rule would be if I was to build a tiny house community, is you don't do drugs on the premises, you don't drink alcohol on the premises, you don't come to the premises high or drunk. I would just ban alcohol and drugs. I'd be like, you don't do drugs, you don't do alcohol, you don't come high, and that's it. I wouldn't make all these strict rules like some of these. Oh, you gotta be back at the little house at this time of the night. You quiet hours. This. No, I just treat it like any normal community. Like, hey, you can stay here for a while, but the rules would be simple. You just gotta be trying to do something to get out of homelessness, make a temporary living. Say, hey, I would have it all set up where they would have an address or something where they could easily get it all set up where they could easily find work, and gear it towards the people who truly want to get up and get out of homelessness. Now, there are some homeless people out there where they just want to live that lifestyle and you can't help them, and what I would do is for homeless people, maybe build some of these and set it up on some private property somewhere, maybe find some abandoned property where they're staying at and set it up where they won't be bothered. And to me, it would look more nicer if I could do it. To me, it would look more nicer than what most homeless people usually build for living quarters. Some of them live in ripped up old tents, or they try to make little shelter tents out of old canopies and tarps. And to me, if more people came together and built little structures like this, it would not only, to me, it would look a lot nicer. And if you was an artist person, you could maybe do some fancy little art details and stuff to it. And to me, it would be a lot cleaner and nicer than what a lot of homeless people, have to tend to. And that is basically one of my goals, is just to someday get the knowledge to be able to build little shed-like structures like these little sheds here, and build a basic structure, maybe like this one here, or this one most likely, and build them into a structure and give them to a homeless person to stay in. And that would be one of my goals, is I'd like to get into learning how to build tiny houses, and maybe also someday too make it possibly into a business where I can build them commercially and sell them to people, and be able to sell them people, like build one where somebody that already has a house and say, hey man, that would be cool for my hunting cabin property. Can you build me one and I'll buy it off you, and be able to say sure, and then take the money and also do that, build them and sell them, and then on the side make a few for the homeless people, like some businesses, how they'll say, oh, if we sell such and such, we'll donate 2 or 3, if we sell 10, we'll donate 2 to somebody, how like some businesses do and stuff, where if they buy so much, they give a little to people in need and stuff. And that's one thing I would do. And like in these things is like for electric and stuff, I would go with a small basic solar setup. I'd add maybe 100, 200 watt little solar panel system, a little basic solar system where they have enough to run some lights on the inside and maybe charge up a cell phone or something and stuff, just something basic. And the solar system I would set up is I would probably go with something that would be portable, where let's say you built one of these and you set up on some abandoned property for them, and say local law enforcement came around and said, hey, I'm sorry, you gotta vacate this property or whatever, and they finally basically got caught and they had to move, where they could take that little rollaway bed. I would put a rollaway bed in there and a little portable solar system in there where they could just easily take some of that stuff up and hurry up, and if they have to go somewhere else and stuff. Or if they have time, they could get out, and if I had the means to and was able to do it, they could call me up and say, hey, hey, I gotta vacate this building in this property area. Could you come help me move this? And possibly, if I had the means, you'd say, sure, There's building tiny houses, there's a lot that to build for homelessness that you gotta factor into, and I obviously, this is just a kind of a beginning idea I had. I'm not have anything set in stone, and it's just kind of like a basic beginning idea. And I even thought about getting creative and maybe building some sort of like little push cart thingy or something. Build like something small that they could, has wheels on it where they can push it around and crawl in there and stay warm, and something, that would be almost like a hard tent or hard camper, some like little push cart thingy or something too. But it's not set in stone. This is just like a rough idea I had, and right now, again, I don't have the money, I don't have the funds to do it, and I don't have the knowledge of building anything, so I really don't know, and I haven't worked out all the details. It would be one of those I'd have to figure out the organizations around me that help out the homeless, and tell them my idea, and then figure out how to go from there, and stuff. But yeah, but to me, if more people built like little tiny house structures just for homeless people, I think there wouldn't be so much harassment going on with homeless people. Because I know it's like I watch this one YouTuber called German in Venice, and he lives out in California, in Venice Beach, California, and he did videos about the homelessness, and I'll put a link in the description for his channel. And he did videos about the homeless problem in Venice Beach, California, and stuff, and how the homeless people were living. And I think if people got together and built more structures like this, I think less people would complain as long as the homeless person kept the outside looking nice and didn't just complete trash it. I think, more people would be respectful if they didn't have so much trash around, because I seen homeless people having piles and piles of bicycle parts and bicycleness, it's like, how much of that stuff do you really need, I know it's hard, being homeless, you can't, you gotta, all your stuff, you gotta have it basically out in the open, you just can't tuck it away nice and neat, but to me, there were some things that just, to me, if I was a homeless person, I would think about, like, okay, have at least one working bicycle and some basic, not hoard a bunch of stuff. Some of them just seemed like they were hoarding stuff, and some of the stuff just, to me, looked like it wasn't even useful at all. It was just plain trash, and I'm like, why didn't they just find a nice time to put things away, but there's a lot that I don't know, and I'm, again, this is just an idea I would like to do, but I thought, if people built more of these little structures for homeless people, I think, and they set them, let's say like in California, they're in a beach or in a public area, and you set one of these up in a public area for a homeless person, let's say, like these homeless people in California where they were on public land, if you set these up, I think less people would complain. There'd be less complaints, I think, and because more people would be like, hey, that's nice, at least he's, because that's the thing, if I was homeless, I would try to not just hoard a bunch of trash. I'd try to make the spot I was at nice and clean, and try to be more respectful, and to me, building something like this, I think, would be a great thing to do in the near future. And it's basically, I would love to build a tiny house for a homeless person, and that's what this video is about, and kind of what I would do and stuff, and what would I add in there, and different things, and basically, again, what I would add is just simply enough space for a small fold-up rollaway bed, a nightstand table, and maybe a small stand-up dresser is what I would do. And I thought an 8x8 structure would be perfect for that, But yeah, that's basically what I would try to do if I had the funds and money, or someday build some tiny house structures for homelessness. And I thought I would make a video about what I would do and stuff, and to basically give people out there some ideas, Maybe there's a builder guy out there that might come across this video, and he might say, hey, that would be a neat idea. You know what? I have the knowledge, and I can, and this stuff, and that might encourage them to go out. And I encourage everybody, if you know about local homeless people in your area, please help them out, I do when I can. I try to best help out the homeless. I know about this thrift store that help in my area called Pocket Change, and they help out homeless people a lot, and I donated a few times to them and stuff, and I plan on when I get the funding to donate more, and that would be one of the people I would go to if I was successful at building a little tiny house structure. Go to her and say, hey, can I set this up on your property, and explain what to do? Because I would go to the person and say, hey, can I set this up on your property? And then you just give it to a homeless person and get with somebody and find out where the homeless person's staying at and figure out how to get it on the and set up in the area where they're camping out at and stuff. That's what I would do. As they would, this store would be the first place I'd go to ask about, hey, I want to build a little tiny house structure for the homeless. How would I go about it? And talk to them and then figure out the other and get with all the other organizations and help out and maybe possibly get with the town that it's in and talk to them and maybe possibly getting some donated land to set up tiny house or whatever. This is just a idea I had in my head. I don't got everything all worked out. It's just a basic, a kind of a start, I guess you would call it. But yeah, if you like more of these videos, I'll probably do more later on. And if I ever do in the near future get the funding, I would definitely, do videos about the build process, like building the structure, and stuff. And I definitely would do that, make videos about that if later on, God willing, I get the funds and knowledge to do that. I would definitely make videos about building those structures. But yeah, if you like these sort of videos, feel free to comment below with some thoughts and ideas to help me out to reach this goal of building these structures. And if you like this video, and if you want to see more of this kind of content, subscribe to my channel. And hope you all have a good day, and thank you for watching.